Lovely Bones is a movie from 2009 directed by Peter Jackson. Um, this movie is not bad. This movie is mediocre, but when we're talking about someone to the caliber of Peter Jackson, I think that it just kind of falls flat. It tries a lot and it doesn't succeed at a lot. And so I don't think it's bad, but I definitely do think that it has some problems. Um, my biggest issues with it are it's boring. It spreads itself very thin, I think. It doesn't give it, you know, it's too focused on giving everything and everyone a subplot. The pacing is not great. I'm not a fan of the washed out color palette, and then I think that just all lends itself to overall, it just has a lack of emotional depth and emotional weight. Um, Peter Jackson artistically is trying to make a fantastical retelling of a child's murder and layer it in shades of metaphor about the afterlife and what it means to be remembered and you know so I never read the book, but I heard that that is performed much better in a literary style, and I don't think it translates to the big screen super well. I don't think the ideas themselves are bad, but the jarring shifts between the ethereal, kind of dreamlike filmmaking, and the rough and kind of grimy reality of like a child being murdered and victimized doesn't it could I think it could be blended in an effective way, but it's not here. You kind of have this rough transition between this dreamlike state and going back to the reality of the situation of like this kid's gone and they've been brutalized and everyone now has to deal with that. And I don't think it blends the two very well. I don't think the film's offensive in its handling of that situation for any like moral reason. I just don't think it didn't come off the way that the filmmakers intended it to, and I think that it's not morally offensive for any reason. But what could the film have done better? Well, the ethereal nature of the film kind of removes the emotional connections to the characters. Uh, the scenes of Susie in the afterlife when when she's swimming through the pond of golden flowers and she's going through the wheat, and there's a lot of cool shots there, but I don't really mean much to me emotionally because I haven't had time with Susie in the real world. I haven't had a warm emotional shot of her to where I feel like I'm connected with her. And so instead of me feeling like I'm going through this dreamlike state with her, it's, oh, I'm just watching her as she discovers this dreamlike state and she moves to the afterlife. Um, the subplot of Abigail and Jack breaking up due to the stress of, losing a child is really interesting. Why don't we focus on it more? Like that, I feel like that was genuinely probably one of the most interesting things of this whole movie, and we don't really talk about it much. It's implied, and then we're showing signs of it, and we're showing the slow, but it should be a slow build up to a big release, and then should be earned to have them come back together, and it's not. It's kind of just imply happens. Everything kind of comes together at the end of the movie, and then now they're back together, in this sort of like cathartic moment. But it's not cathartic because there's no tension there. We're not releasing anything because no tension's been earned. So I wasn't really a fan of that. I thought that could have been a great subplot, and I thought that should have been like the main focus. But it kind of just falls flat, and that's really unfortunate because I think it would have been a very effective part of the film. What does work though is the performances. The performances in this film are really good. The whole cast does great, but specifically Stanley Tucci and Mark Wahlberg, I think, do phenomenal. Stanley Tucci is great. He's creepy, he's unsettling, but he's also got this kind of weird, like, nice guy, charismatic belief to him, to where you buy him being manipulative, you buy him being able to, get away with stuff like this, and you understand that how he could, influence someone and kind of bring someone into a circle in order to make them vulnerable. It makes it, much more believable. And Stanley Tucci does a great job of that. And then Mark Wahlberg, his grief, seeing him deal with the grief is really cool. Like when Stanley Tucci's talking to the police officers, you can see how he could come off as charismatic, how he can handle himself well when he's in the scene where he's trying to hide the bracelet. But my favorite scene in the whole movie is actually the interaction between the two. When Stanley Tucci and Mark Wahlberg are talking to one another, and Stanley, and like you can see Mark Wahlberg slowly start to piece together what happened to his daughter, and Stanley's reacting to this, and he can see that he's getting more unsettled, and he's kind of putting together like, oh, this guy's figuring it out. I think that was my favorite scene in the movie, and I think it was just wonderfully performed, and, I was a big fan of that scene, and I think that was good. More of that, real, that had emotional weight to it. We saw subtlety, it wasn't all about the fantastical nature of the production, so I just love that scene. The directorial choice that I would make instead, Ray and Ruth either have to be completely restructured or they have to go. The whole time they're on screen, I just found myself going, who are these people and why should I care? We're shown very minor connections to Susie in the front, in the opening scenes. And then it turns out they're the crux of Susie's entire discovery, and it just, that felt flat to me. And then the implications of, like, Susie, like, becoming Ruth, and then it was weird. It's creepy. It wasn't, like, cool. It wasn't a nice emotional moment. It was like, I was, like, uncomfortable. I don't even want to deal with the implications of that. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But I would just spend less time on the visual creation and more time on the emotional grounding of the stories. I want us to experience this afterlife feeling with Susie. And then, this is just an easy one, but, like, George's death is just silly. It doesn't feel serious. The effects look bad. And just imply it if you really need him to be dead. And then, I don't know. Overall, the film had a lot of great ideas, but it falls super flat in its execution, and it keeps getting in its own way. The movie attempts to do way too much, and because of this, it spends too much time on things that are not important. So, yeah, there's bad films from good directors.